All right, here we are. Live. I'm gonna try this right now. I'm not sure if it's gonna work. I was hoping to originally bring in Black Betty for this, which is our new computer, but it seems as if Black Betty is not really working all that well. So, working very well when it comes to what we need done, but not so much when it comes to high-speed internet. So this is much clearer than I was getting with her. It's a computer that I was given. For those of you guys who've been following my adventures this summer, I had no computer, so I was using my daughter's Chromebook for this, and we had a really good discussion going on haunted schools a few weeks ago, and the entire thing got jammed. So I wasn't able to get things done. Problem is, what I'm trying to do right now, if it looks like I'm not paying attention, it's because I'm trying to figure out a way. Maybe if I do this, I'm going to go on Tripping on Legends here. And I'm hoping that Natalie is around and will share to Tripping on Legends, and maybe I can get it through there. Because unfortunately, the way this is, I don't know if I'll be able to, effectively, oh, don't want that. Don't know whether I'll be effectively be able to answer your questions or see your questions and respond to them as quickly as I possibly can. So those are my caveats. So I'm gonna get right into, I am wearing my Silver Springs t-shirt, which somehow makes me look huge. Just remember the camera has 10 pounds. Good evening. This is Tripping on Legends Live, now where I'm officially starting. Welcome to Tripping on Legends Live. I am Christopher Balzano. Natalie Christ is hopefully going to at least drop in to comment. So we'll see what's going on and share this. But if not, then it's just going to be us. I was hoping that maybe we could get a little bit of a, instead of my normal, Robert, I have a much bigger coffee with me tonight because I feel maybe we're going to be getting into it a little bit. And I'm hoping that there will be a discussion on this because I think that this is something that plagues the paranormal field. And it's really difficult to define that, right? And we sometimes push up against that. What is the paranormal field? And is there a paranormal field and things like that? But I thought that this discussion would at least open up a dialogue because it's something I've been concerned with for a while. To some degree, it's what I do now, as opposed to what I used to do. And so I'm really looking for people to present their ideas. And if you are watching this now, and you don't have any idea what I'm talking about, feel free to comment as someone who's maybe not into the paranormal. And if you're listening to this afterwards, you can always email your opinions to us at spookytripping@gmail.com, or here on the Facebook feed that we have, Facebook.com/Tripping on Legends, or hit us up on Twitter with it. So there was a little bit of Twitter action this afternoon about this topic, which was kind of cool. All right, it's not working, so I'm just going to go like this. But I would like to have people's opinion on this, but I'm going to start really quickly, just a little bit. Natalie and I went, and thank you guys who were following us this week, we went on our summer trip, our summer legend trip. We got to hit basically 3 towns: Silver Springs, the Silver Springs State Park, which was amazing. We got to go to DeLand. We spent the day in DeLand, mainly Stetson. We actually took a trip to Oviedo to get a little bit of the Oviedo lights. I don't think we posted anything about the Oviedo lights. And then the first day there, we were at the Astor Library. We did some other locations in Astor. So we've been posting stuff, and hopefully you guys have been following as we've been doing it. Happy birthday, Gail. But if you haven't, we were trying to kind of track down some major legends in this area. Part of it for the Haunted Love Project, part of it for something I'm working on, which is very similar to Dark Woods, but kind of based around the Ocala State Forest here in Florida. And it was much different. If you followed us last year, and I've been posting those, like reposting those from last year was all about experiencing these different locations that were not in our state. Anthony, I was actually going to invite you in because your name popped up for inviting. And I was thinking about you because you were so active last year when we were doing this. It was about going to a location, experiencing it, and then kind of coming back. There was very little research done kind of ahead of time. We knew the locations, we knew about it, we didn't know what it was going to look like when we got there. These were about, this trip was about research. We spent, I've got about 7-8 hours of interviews that I've got to transcribe that have a lot of really good stuff. A lot of it was about finding out that these legends that we were talking about are not only not true, but kind of fabricated. You know, there's a difference between those two things. One is there's a legend and you're able to track it down. Bloody Bucket would be an example of this. You're able to track it down and see how someone had written about it, and then all of a sudden someone else turned it into a legend. Some of the ones we found out, and we're going to, especially in the next episode, episode 44, 43 is coming out this next week, next Monday. 44, you're really going to hear about all this stuff in the land that is totally wrong, which was kind of exciting for us. We are legend trippers. That means that the primary motivation for what we do is to experience what someone has said has happened. If someone can do me a huge favor, just because it's been so long since I've done with my phone, can someone just comment for me so that I know whether or not I can read comments as I go and respond to them? I see a whole bunch of people who are watching, but I just need to know, does someone give me a comment? Colvin, give me a comment, just so I know that it's there so I can read it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Hashtag Silver Springs. I wrote this book. It's backwards to you guys, but it's pretty much backwards if you've read it. It's capturing yourself, picture yourself capturing ghosts on film. And it is a gang. It is a horrible book. Don't buy the book, please. If you have the book, I'm sorry. I can't give you a refund on it, trust me. It is a horrible book, not because I'm a horrible writer, although that's arguable whether or not I'm a horrible writer. The idea of it is flawed. This is a book that is dedicated to telling you, whoever you may be, the best way to get to capture ghosts on film, to get a picture of a ghost, to get a video that features a ghost, how to analyze what you're seeing, how to tell a ghost picture from a non-ghost picture. And it's one of those things where you could argue, I think it's a weak book. You could argue that it is the best book for the time that it was written, right? It looks at what ideas about how to capture ghosts on film, how to get a ghost, what a ghost is, why it might be able to show up on film. It focuses on how to do that. And for when it was written, you could say that it had the pulse of what the paranormal ideas were behind ghosts and behind cameras and how to use them correctly. Technology changes all the time. This book was written about 10 years ago. I think it was published less than that, but it was written about 10 years ago. And it's a flawed book in that I think that evidence itself is flawed. I think that it's really difficult to get a consensus on what is good evidence and what is not good evidence. More importantly, I think it's really hard to get evidence which can then be presented. I am famous for having said, hi Barb, I'm famous for having said over and over again, no one wants to see your CD collection. No one cares about your CD collection as much as you do. No one cares about your ghost picture as much as you do. No one cares about your EVP. I know I'm kind of focusing originally on pictures, but it goes beyond that. It's really hard to have evidence, present evidence, and to have that evidence be taken seriously. And one of the things I want to talk tonight about is, what do you consider great evidence? And then also, do we need evidence? And that's kind of the part that I'm hoping kind of sparks a little bit of juice in people. Does the paranormal field need evidence? Do ideas on ghosts have to be reinforced by evidence? So I'm going to first throw that question out. I've already gotten some responses on Twitter, and so I would love to have, unfortunately, those people said they couldn't come on tonight, but I would love to have your ideas on that. But I want to talk about a picture that was sent to me last week. And the picture had, I got the picture at about probably 11 o'clock at night. It was pretty late, fairly late, which is not late for me, but yes, if the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit. Evidence is horrible. It was a picture which had a purple burst in it. And the person asked me if they thought that it was a ghost, or could it potentially be a ghost. Now, before I really had a chance to respond, because I get that question a lot, especially having written a book about it, right? Especially back in the day, I would get that question all the time. I remember being at the Mass Mystery Tour convention, whatever it was, and a woman came up to me with literally dozens of pictures and wanted me to go picture by picture why it was a ghost, why it wasn't a ghost. She wanted to tell me the situation about each and every one of them. So I know that feeling of someone approaching you, and the thing is that these are theirs, right? Your piece of evidence is like a piece of yourself that you're presenting, right? And if you've gone through the trouble of publishing it, and by publishing it, that could just mean putting it up on the internet. It could just mean walking up to someone who is not your close friend and saying, is this a ghost? Or evaluate this for me. It becomes part of who you are. There's a certain level of expectation, right? And at that point, I would have been considered an expert merely for the fact, I should charge by the picture, merely by the fact that I had written a book, and then I was doing this for a while. And there's always that bit of hesitation in me, because I can't, given the state of things, given what some people consider a good picture, what some people don't consider a good picture, like who do you trust in that? What makes a good picture? What is, like Natalie says, what is good evidence anyway? This woman then proceeded, before I kind of pushed her off, well, you know, it could be this, could be that. Didn't want to give her a solid answer on it, and before I could do that, she went into the emotional context behind this, which is she thought it was a relative who had passed. Okay, so now I have a picture which is questionable. I have an emotional connection by the person telling it to me. What gives me the right to say it is or it isn't? Right? Okay, so if it was, I mean, I've given pictures that were obviously ghost apps, right? But this piece of evidence that I was given, how do I tell this person, no, this is not your loved one coming to contact you? Especially when, now if it was obvious, that's fine. But especially when the boundaries for what is an acceptable piece of evidence and what's not an acceptable piece of evidence are very, very shady. Not shady, there's a negative connotation to that. They're very ambiguous. You ask one person, they say it's got to have a solid center. You ask another person, they said it doesn't have to have a solid center. Reflections of light, da 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 da. As kind of proof of this, I posted a picture, a ghost picture myself this week. Natalie and I were, and I'll give the context for that because some people were asking. So Natalie and I were in Elizabeth Hall, which has a reputation for being haunted. We went to Stetson to check out Tully Hall, and I'm getting that wrong. It's Hully Hall, not Tully Hall. And pretty much to prove that ghosts don't exist there, which we'll get back to. And they wanted to talk about Elizabeth Hall, because they're like, Elizabeth Hall is really haunted. You've got to go there. So we ended up going there, and we took the picture that is online. So if you haven't looked at the picture, go back a few days, and you'll see it. I actually posted it as the picture for this event, so you can reference that too. And to me, thank you, Hully Tower. To me, when I look at that, it looks as if there's something there. right? It looks as if, and I've seen it a few different ways, which kind of, you know, is part of the whole trick of it, right? It looks to me as if it's someone either sitting on the stairs or standing, and I can see the head, I can see the shoulders, kind of going down, and it's very famous to the brown monk, which is why I was glad that Jeff posted that. Posted it up there to get people's responses. I got very few responses on some jokes, which I expect, right? But very few responses as to whether or not this is a ghost picture or not. And this kind of feeds into why I don't, and I had this whole thing figured out. I was going to do this post a while ago called Why I Don't Post Ghost Pictures Anymore. Even if they're from like the Star or you have to take into consideration so much, right? Forget about the conditions in which you took the picture. Do you trust me? Do you trust that I am taking this picture and presenting it to you honestly? One of the things I want to do is I want to post the question, what is the most convincing evidence you've seen for the existence of ghosts? Or heard, right? Because we're also talking about EVPs. You got to shift. That you didn't make, right? That you did not produce. And what I found when I've addressed this question before is people only really truly trust what they've done, right? People are having a hard time, and this only changes as technology changes. I was talking about to Rob McConnell on X Zone about this a few weeks ago. Technology has only made it easier for us to cheat, and we are so eager to attack and so eager to dismiss something because there is no way to prove it. If you don't trust me, hypothetically, if that picture was perfect conditions, if you don't trust me, I made it up, right? And so it really becomes, did the person who created it, are they trustworthy? Are they genuine? And the fact of the matter is we trust less and less, right? Or we trust the people who have been dubbed authorities. I always said that, I remember when Andrew Lake, when I first met him, and he was new in the field, in that he was just kind of getting in. This guy was a person who was producing great evidence that I really trusted, that I really thought was genuine, and he was new. And some people were dismissive because they're like, well, he hasn't been in the field for 20 years. And I was like, oh, but have you seen what this guy's getting? Or have you seen what he's gotten? And have you seen the way in which he gets it? You have to trust me to trust whether or not that picture is real. Now comes the second part of that. We have all become experts in science that really isn't science, right? We call it pseudoscience, but there's another part of it too. We've become experts in attacking based on the little bit of knowledge that we have. And a little bit of knowledge is a bad thing sometimes. We are so eager, and this actually didn't happen in my photography. I thought the people who were talking about it were talking intelligently, but I've seen this. You post something, and 23 people have these really, really complex scientific reasons for why it's not real. And it's like, I don't really get what you're saying. We are sometimes so eager to sound smart and so eager to have that reason for why it's not, that we don't really even take the time to consider whether it is. We're just so eager to, and I hate this word. You know I hate this word. We're so eager to debunk something because debunking and having the ability to debunk makes us smart, makes us experienced, makes us professional-ish. I just made up a word, but that's okay. I can make up words if I want. We feel that if we're allowed to say, if we have the ability to say and to use buzzwords that have been around, we've made our bones, right? We've put in our time and our effort to discover these things. And sometimes we don't even really look at the picture. We're just kind of throwing it out there. The fact of the matter is this, for that picture, and I would love to have people go back to that picture maybe with this. And I didn't want to put anything out about it. Elizabeth Hall is known for being haunted. The staircases are known for being haunted. We were following up on a story that takes place on those staircases. On that staircase, I should say. Third floor of it, this was the first floor. It has a history of it. If you look at the way that the light comes in, it was taken at about, I would say, 3 o'clock. It is a west-facing window, and so the light that's coming in is coming directly in. If you look at the way that the reflection is on those windows, maybe one of the streaks makes sense, but the other two don't. So here we have a picture. And Natalie, I want your opinion on this because you're so much more sensitive than I am. I think that maybe not so much the second time. Well, actually, probably more the second time. I felt that there was something there. Which of those is more important? A picture which may or may not reveal something that can be debunked, or a somewhat tainted, because we're obviously in the field and we want this stuff to happen, or we want an answer for something. No, you don't think, you didn't get any kind of feeling. Natalie's saying you shouldn't get any kind of feeling. Which would be the better piece of evidence, right? Which is more important? Which is more telling? A picture that may or may not show something, or a questionable picture, but at that moment, feeling as if you are touching something. And I'll give you a better example of it, even though it's a little bit of a spoiler. Natalie and I then went back to Stetson in the morning, right? It's at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. We went back to Stetson because there's a legend about the Hulleys walking their dog, or at least walking with each other. Sitting on those greens, in the shadow, not really because it was dark out, in the shadow of Tully Tower, I feel as if I witnessed something paranormal. It was as if something was glimmering across my field of view. Natalie saw something different. We'll get into it more in episode 44. But I have no picture of that. I mean, I took pictures. I haven't been able to see anything in it. How can not having evidence to present to you diminish what we experienced? To Natalie and I, maybe it doesn't. To you, does it? Do you care what we experienced as opposed to what we were able to get out of it? Piece of evidence 2. Posted a video this afternoon. And it is of a door opening on command. So I'll give you some background on that too. We were in that area, and this is in episode 43, which the whole story will be there. We were in that area because someone had said that the ballroom, which is attached to it, if that's the hallway to get into the ballroom, was haunted. So we wanted to see if we could get into the ballroom. And we ended up going in there, and there was all these artifacts, and it was really, really cool. And we ended up seeing a ranger who we ended up talking to for about a half hour, Natalie, maybe 20 minutes, half hour. And the whole time we were 5-10 feet from that door. The door didn't move at all. Natalie went to the bathroom, I'm pretty sure. And as we were examining some of the artifacts that were there, because they were really cool, we heard, well, I guess we can maybe now even dub the Tripping on Legend scratch, because we've gotten this in several different places. So Natalie, I start the tape recorder, and Natalie says something. We can't remember what it was, but it was something like, I think that something is there. Like, she said something, and the door swung open maybe a little bit more than it does in the video. Then we both start our videos, and you see that the door swings open. Do you believe it? Is it a ghost? So we follow up on it a little bit. Actually, we don't follow up on it. They come to us. We're asking them about ghosts. And several different people, once again, to get the full story, you got to listen to the episode. Several different people say that that area is haunted. So now we've got a backstory to it. Now we've got, or at least a history to it. The fact of the matter is, the hallway itself, this passageway, has tons of artifacts, some of which are like genuine Native American artifacts. Like there's a canoe or dugout that was taken out of the Silver Springs that dates back, all that, back to the Native Americans before settlers came. And part of it is artifacts which we may think of as not that old, but are like 50, 60, 70 years old. These dioramas and things like that belong to this park over the years. Old stuff. Connected. Backstory. Experience. Is that enough to sell it to you? Okay. Next part of it. We were in that hallway for a good 45 minutes. Because right after that video, another ranger came out and we talked to him for a little bit. And he was a non-believer. I don't believe in any of this stuff. It wasn't really all that helpful. But once again, especially Natalie, was watching the door. Natural experience, natural occurring thing. There's another door on the other side. It's a bathroom that has 2 entrances, wind tunnels, all that kind of good stuff. And yet, except for when we were making direct contact with whatever this was, the door didn't move. Do you trust us? Is what you are seeing on that video potentially a ghost? There is a problem, I think, with evidence. I started tripping on legends because I felt that people who were the names, people who were driving, not just the TV shows, sorry I'm shifting here, not just the TV shows, not just the media, radio shows, books, things like that, but people who were driving the ideas were getting away from experience as a cornerstone for our paranormal knowledge, right? Which contradicts itself. We think of paranormal things. We think of paranormal ideas. We think of how to get evidence anecdotally. In other words, a cold spot happens side by side with a paranormal experience, and therefore we associate cold spots with ghosts, right? And then we kind of backwork it, right? Okay, well, why is that? I remember getting into a discussion, I think with Matt Moniz on Spooky South Coast one night, being like, well, why is it cold? Why is it not hot? And he's like, well, it's an endothermic versus an exothermic reaction. I'm like, well, why is it endothermic instead of exothermic? Like, you can keep taking that back. And I can understand the need to feel as if you can hold the paranormal in a box. That there is a way to get evidence. There's a way to say that this is good evidence, this is bad evidence. But I don't think it exists. I don't think it truly exists. I don't think that You can have an excuse for every single thing. In this book, there is a picture taken at Elvis's grave. And in this picture taken at Elvis's grave, there's a black column right on, right over his grave. And I intentionally put that picture in the book and then asked like 30 people, why is this a ghost or not a ghost? And if not a ghost, why? And if a ghost, why? And what I found was people who said that it was a ghost couldn't tell me why. Couldn't tell me why it was a better picture of a ghost than not. And the people that thought it wasn't a ghost would refuse to accept the reasons or my explanation for the things they were saying. The big one was because this is an older picture. It's a strap. It's a camera strap. I'm like, she didn't have a camera strap. Well, yes, she did. She probably just forgot. I'm like, she showed me the camera. It doesn't have a strap. It's no camera strap. No. We can make so many excuses for it, but the problem is when we allow that to be what moves things forward. If we allow the quality of evidence and the precision with which we can gather evidence and which we can attack evidence to be the defining characteristic of whether some place is haunted or whether whether an investigator is good, because that's the other part of it, I think there's a problem with that. I think that there's a problem when you rely solely on evidence to tell you whether something is haunted. And then as an extension of that, the nature of ghosts themselves. I have heard, and I always tell this story, but I remember the very first conference I spoke at, and someone was, had an EVP, and they were evaluating what this EVP said. And I remember it being a violent argument over what was being said, and no one was looking at the fact that there was a voice on tape that they could not explain. And it became, I guess you could say, as they were, not seeing the forest for the trees. So I present to you, and I'm gonna say it, and then I want you guys to respond, and then I'm gonna keep going. Do we need evidence in the paranormal field? Now, I think of myself as not necessarily in the paranormal field, right? Tripping on Legends focuses on the backstories of these locations, and then kind of as a secondary thing, we always look at evidence, right? And there's a seduction to that. There's a seduction to, I have probably about 5 hours worth of audio, which is just ready to be evaluated for EVPs. And Natalie and I always kind of go by the idea of, if we don't hear it, we're not breaking it down, because we don't want to become transfixed. And yet there's that seduction. There's that desire to feel that what you've done is real, or what you've found is real, based on a little piece of audio, right? We've been in haunted locations. We've had experiences. Why are those experiences any less important than being able to give you a ghost picture or a video or an EVP that says something? So I'm posing 2 questions to the room, and then I'm going to keep talking until people answer. The first question is, what is the best piece of evidence, the most convincing, I shall say, the most convincing piece of evidence you've ever gotten that you did not get yourself, that someone else produced? And the second question is, should we get rid of evidence as the most important thing to looking into the paranormal? I'm not going to say investigating, because I'm going to leave it broad enough. Does the paranormal need evidence? And what is the most convincing evidence for ghosts that you have ever seen that you did not get yourself? And I'm talking evidence, I'm not talking experience. I'm not talking your mom said that she saw a ghost and so you believe your mom. I'm talking about a physical piece of evidence, a picture, a video, an EVP, anything like that. What is your most convincing one? From someone else. It's got to be from someone else, because you trust yourself when you get it. And then the second part is, do we need evidence? Do we need evidence? Does it get in the way? So I'm gonna, and if you guys talk, if you don't want me, just say, don't say my name or whatever. But Mark has said, do we need evidence? What would constitute evidence enough to make a non-believer a believer? And I'm going to give you a very simple question to that. From the point of view, now this is a little bit old, but from the point of view, when I was working on my first Picture Yourself book, Picture Yourself Ghost Hunting, I asked, I think 24, no, it's got to be more than that. It was about 40 investigators that I knew at the time, or that just kind of like came across the radar. I asked them, what would it take, what evidence would it take to convince people that ghosts are real? Or what would it take to convince? And every single one of them said a personal experience. That I don't think I don't think that any evidence is going to convince a person who doesn't think a ghost is real that a ghost is real. I don't think anything is going to convince them that. It might lean them the right way. And I think that idea becomes more and more, the idea that you're not going to convince someone through evidence becomes more and more, that becomes stronger every year as we find more and more ways to manipulate our media. I have like 7 different news feeds that come through. Every single day I get pictures of ghosts. And even when I was doing the news for Spooky South Coast, every single day there is a ghost picture from somewhere in this world, and a lot of them are published by British tabloids, and I never post them, very rarely post them unless I think there's something cool to the story, because as soon as you post them, 23 people say it's not real, look at the magazine it's in, look at the newspaper it's in, there's this, it's that, I saw this, that's a ghost app. That I think we're so it's really hard for us to believe anything that we see. And so I don't think anything is going to convince them. Okay, so I'm going to, Colleen says, a particular photo taken at the Lizzie Borden house. I was a tour guide there and was shown the photo as part of my orientation. So thank you very much, Colleen, for sharing. So let me ask you this. If the picture was taken with no context, would you have believed it? Oh, hi. Would you have believed it? Would you, if it was taken at a neighbor's house instead? And let me ask you this, Colleen, and you can share the answer. I'll just kind of leave it out there. What about the picture convinced you? What was it about that picture that convinced you that you were looking at a ghost at the Lizzie Borden house? Obviously, you're in one of the most haunted locations, or the most famously haunted locations. But what about the evidence itself? What about the picture itself convinced you that something might be up? I've had my own personal experiences at the Lizzie Borden house, and I've seen photo evidence. And my personal experiences at the Lizzie Borden house are a lot stronger to me than any of the evidence I've seen there. Not that there hasn't been really good evidence collected there. So I'm going to wait for Colleen to respond to that if she can. If not, if you don't feel comfortable, Colleen, that's fine. I'll give you my most convincing piece of evidence. Even out of context, I think it would have been. I would love if we could give her. I would love to see, get that picture somehow. Colleen, I don't know if you still work there or if you, I'm trying to look. I can't tell from the picture if you're one of the people that I know there. But we'd love to see that picture to see how convincing it is. Hello, Jaden. Plenty of experiences in the Lizzie Borden house as well. So, Colleen, I would love to hear some of those experiences sometime as well. I'm going to give you my strongest If you, Colleen, I'm sorry if I keep interrupting my thought for Colleen. I don't want to get away from her. Colleen, if you can get a picture, if you can get a copy of that picture, I would love to. I would love to see it because, I mean, I've seen a lot of evidence from the Lizzie Borden house, and like I said, I've gotten evidence from the Lizzie Borden house. Unfortunately, in this book, we have the seance that Jackie Barrett did there. Jane just came in, so I'm just going to give Jane a heads up of what we've been talking about. He says he's new to Tripping on Legends. I'm Christopher Balzano, Tripping on Legends, formerly of Spooky South Coast, formerly of Massachusetts Paranormal Crossroads. We are talking tonight about evidence, ghostly evidence. And the question that I put forth, Jane, before you came in was two things, and we had a little bit of a discussion on it. One, what is the most convincing piece of evidence that you ever had, that you've ever seen or heard, that you did not get yourself, that you got from someone else? And the second thing that I asked you was, I asked the group was, does the paranormal need evidence? Do we need to start moving away from putting such a strong emphasis on getting evidence and more of an emphasis on experience? So those are that's kind of the discussion that we're having right now that we would love to have you, Jane, contribute to. So, Colleen, my email, or you can actually just do it from here. You can just kind of send me something on Messenger, a link or the picture. We can contact, friend request me. I would love it. Matt Moniz and Lucky. So if you're a fan of Spooky South Coast, you definitely know Matt Moniz, but you probably know Lucky as well, because he's been on the show a few times and they talk about him. They used to talk about him often. They were at Waverly Hills, and they were, I believe they were picking Lucky up from the base, and they were in Waverly Hills, and they were trying to recreate what ghost hunters had gotten when they went to Waverly Hills. And so they had a camera like facing down, and they were filming the hallway the way they had, and I think they were trying to recreate, I don't watch Ghost Hunters, they were trying to recreate like a thermal imaging thing that they had gotten there. And they had like some sophisticated military equipment. And so it's shooting down the hallway, and as you're watching it, you see a dark figure on the camera turn around the corner, look, stop for a second as if like it didn't know that there was going to be someone there, and like pull back quick. To me, now talking about it, I get chills with that evidence, right? And there's a combination of different things that do it. It was a solid figure, so it wasn't like, oh, it acted like a human, right? It acted like we think a human does. The environment itself is notorious for being haunted. I trust Matt and Lucky. It was those combinations of things which made it feel to me as if there was something definitely going on in that. And I think you could probably go to Spooky South Coast, and if you go way, way, way back. Mark, have you seen the evidence I'm talking about? The film I'm talking about? It was like one of the first videos they ever published. So it would be like way, way, way back. All right, so, okay, so Jane knows the piece of evidence that I'm talking about. All right, so Jeff here, who is a scientist. Can I say that you're a scientist, Jeff? I'm going to read what he wrote. Years ago, there was a school bus that was hit by a train, and it killed all or nearly all the kids on board. My roommate's aunt, a photographer, was on her way to her job and happened to be driving by the crossing when the school bus was hit. She got out of the car and habitually grabbed her camera and took 15 to 20 high-speed shots right in a row. About the fifth picture in, there was a bright light going from top to bottom of the photo, and it lasted about 10 frames. Brightest about 5, and then dimmed away so you could see the bus again. Okay, so just so you know, Jeff, I totally thought this story was going to go a different way, and I was about to be like, dude, you know that's not real. Jeff, why was that picture convincing? Was it convincing because it was your aunt? Was it convincing because it was, someone who you trust, or because you know that there was an experience that was going on, or that had something to it. I would also like to know where this happened, because as far as I know, there has not been a train that has killed a school bus of kids, except for in upstate New York. So I would love to know more details about that, Jeff, if you can get those to me, or even if you want to respond right here. I'm not getting anyone wanting to talk about the controversial part of this, but that's okay. Outside Chicago. Okay. Jeff, if you give me more information about it, I would love to know more about it, and you maybe even see those pictures, because that's a really cool experience. So thank you, Jeff, for sharing it as well. Natalie has said, maybe talk about some really convincing evidence that you've gotten. I'm going to try to find it here as I talk, so if you're responding and I'm ignoring you, feel free to be mad, but I'm trying to show you because it's actually in here. I'm not sure how I feel about this book. A large portion of this book are things like this. Natalie, here's the picture I was talking about the other day about me in at Universal. The majority of this book, which is the problem with evidence, is it's telling you like what's not evidence. It's telling you why things are not the way they are. It's basically showing you photographs that are either faked or easily explainable. What I'm looking for right now, and maybe I can, as I'm talking, just kind of get it for you guys and share the link to it. So can you guys still see me when I go off to another page? I don't know if you can or you can't. But I'll share the link afterwards in the show notes. But it is at the Country Tavern in Nashua. The most convincing ghost picture I ever took was in the Country Tavern, which I didn't know was notoriously haunted. All I knew is that my parents went there like once a week. They love that place. And so, all right, so you guys are saying you can still see me. I can't see what I look like. Oh, what am I talking about? I'm not even on that. Okay. I know this makes for bad video, but I'm going to try to get this for you guys. Send it to you. Went to this place called the Country Tavern, and great food. And it has a story of a woman who, her backstory is that she was having an affair on her seafaring husband, on her captain husband. He came back, found he was pregnant. She hacked him up. He hacked her up, buried her somewhere on the property. They think the well. And then what they did was, they covered the whole thing up. And her ghost is supposedly still haunting that restaurant. And so people have experienced, especially in the bathroom, the girls' bathroom, people playing with their hair. People have experienced doors swinging open and the like, to the point that like everyone knows Elizabeth is kind of there, and this is what she does. And I decided, I shouldn't say I decided because I didn't have any stake in this whatsoever, or any decision in this. All right, I'm gonna try to save this to, or post this to the comments here. Let's see if this works. So I'm putting it to that. That might have just saved on Tripping on Legends and not on the real thing. Let me see if I can do this here. You know what? I'm going to stop doing this and get to the story part of it, because the story is more compelling than the picture, I think. Dead woman, never got to see her child born. I had my first child, my son's shower there. Random picture during it. There is a very clear basketball-sized floating object, orb, between my godmother and the person who will become Devin's godmother. It is in 3 dimensions. It is, I mean, crazy. Let's see here. Crazy strong, I think, evidence. Boom, I was able to post it right there. And yet, people say it's not good. People say it's not real. People say, oh, well, it's this, it's that. I'm like, you can look at my mom's glasses. I said mine, Natalie. Mine was the Waverly Hills picture. I think the Waverly Hills picture was really compelling to me. I look at that Waverly Hills thing and I'm like, there are ghosts. There are ghosts. Let me see, the strongest piece of audio evidence I've ever gotten. That I didn't get myself, that I heard that I didn't get myself. I don't think I've ever gotten anything that convinced me one way or the other when it came to someone else's audio. I know that I've been freaked out by EVPs, other people's EVPs. Right, 3 killed by bus train in France, 4 in England, 12 in India, not in the United States. Right, and of course what I'm talking about is the urban legend of the one in Texas, which is then kind of translated to everybody, or all the states. I'm going to try to do this down a little bit. Okay. That is, I know that there was one in Buffalo because someone wrote to me after Picture Yourself, or one of my books, they posted that, but I don't know. I really want to have you guys know, like, do we need evidence? Now, I have a cross section here of investigators, people who I respect as investigators, people who are on the side of that. We have Jess says, were the recordings made at the Civil War prisoner of war camp a real thing? I'm not sure exactly the ones that you're referring to, but I know a lot of really good evidence has come out of. Oh, you posted. I can't click on the link really quickly for it. I'll have to wait on it. But I know that there's a lot of really good evidence that comes out of Gettysburg. But here's the thing, whether or not it's a real thing is kind of where you get tricky. I don't know that person. I don't know the person who posted that. I don't know what they are. So how can I fully trust it? I will actually follow up on that because there are some people who do that. So do we need evidence? Do we need evidence? There are people who do not like what Natalie and I are doing, or who don't think what Natalie and I are doing is real. Because when we post the pictures, Andersonville, I'll have to check up on it, Jeff, and get back to you on it. When we go to these places, our primary focus is not that. Our primary focus is what is the experience that people are having there, and what does that experience mean for them, and not necessarily what is the best thing we can get. Have we gotten great evidence? Have we gotten great things or things that we turn away from? Have we gotten things that on the way home are freaking us out because we're listening to it? Yes. And are those kind of the sweet spots for selling the stuff? Sometimes, yeah. But do we need it, right? If right now we were to say evidence is no longer part of the paranormal, that the gathering of evidence is no longer important or is going to be put on the back burner, how would those of you who are investigators respond, right? And then how would those of you who are consumers of the paranormal respond? And I think that we lean on evidence because it makes what we do feel solid. But I also think that if we can get that perfect piece of evidence, we think we can convince people. Notice I didn't bring up the discussion of what'll convince someone who doesn't believe in ghosts. You guys did. We are convinced that if we can get it, and if we can get that perfect picture that can't be explained away, science will take the paranormal seriously. Why do we need to have science take the paranormal seriously? if we get that perfect EVP, it'll somehow unlock the key to what a ghost is. And the fact of the matter is, I have seen all levels of the spectrum on how to get an EVP. Perfect digital tape recorder, analog with a lot of noise, create noise yourself, all these different kind of things. And all of them have, in their own right, become effective. Or at least effective for certain investigators or certain people. None of them are perfect for everybody. And more importantly, they conflict with each other. Jeff asks, do you think that people will generally be skeptical until they have an experience themselves? Before my experience with my grandfather, I would have said no way. Since then, I would say, show me, please. I am interested. Yeah, I don't think people will be convinced. I think even when people do have an experience, they're not going to necessarily be convinced. And I always bring up my dad, who had an experience, and when you ask him about it, he'll tell you the entire ghost story. When he gets to the end, goes, but it wasn't a ghost. Well, what was it? I don't know, but it wasn't a ghost. I think that most people are going to have, unless they're a kid, right? Like, I can go in there right now and I can convince my daughter that anything is real because she trusts me and because she's young and she hasn't developed too many filters yet. If you're talking to an adult who has not had a personal experience, I don't think anything is going to convince them other than having one. I don't think anything is going to make them feel that way. And then, even then, Jeff, you're saying yourself, like, that you're not necessarily convinced, but you're more open to it because you've had that personal experience. Let me ask you, Jeff, what evidence would convince you, right? So you say, show me, please, I'm interested. What could I show you? I'm not sure if you looked at the picture in the video that I posted. I don't know if you've listened to the episodes, some of the ones that we've had that have the audio evidence especially. What could I do to convince you? I don't feel the need to convince you. You're either going to or you're not. But what do you think I could do that could convince you that ghosts are real? So we're coming up on about an hour. If you guys want to keep going, we can keep going with this. If not, we can close it out. You guys give me a little bit of feedback on that. Oh, someone asked Mark asked what the title of the new book is. Don't know what the title of the new book is because I'm kind of, originally it was just about the Ocala Forest, and now I'm kind of feeling, based on some of the stories, I might have to push it out a little bit. So I'm not sure if it's going to be, it was going to be like Haunted Ocala or Dark Woods too. We're still working on the Haunted Love book as well. So it's going to probably be something along the lines, the title of the new book is going to be something along the lines of, haunted folklore of Florida or something like that, or Central Florida. Do you think, this is Annette who has, Annette, I don't know if you still have your show, but if you like Paranormal Radio, Annette does a really good job. She's then, for a while, I know you were doing the Paranormal bookstore, where you were interviewing just authors. And she asks, which do you think more people will believe, audio or photographic? Wow. I know that I think people will believe photographic more. In that, I think more people are convinced that their ears can be tricked than their eyes can be tricked. I think most people probably believe it's easier for the general person to manipulate a photograph. But once you get to that point that it may be real, it may not be real, I think it's a lot easier to look at a picture and say that you see something or don't see something, as opposed to an EVP where you're like, well, I don't really hear what you're saying. I mean, we get that all the time. Natalie and I are constantly doing that. I'll give something to her for an EVP, and I'll be like, there's a whole sentence there. She's like, nope, don't hear it. So I think more people misunderstand what they hear or are less convinced by that. And yet they when they see something, they're able to make, they're able to kind of make that connection easier. And they trust their eyes. Jaden says that listening to people's stories is more convincing. Yeah, but I think once again, if you trust the person, So we got probably about 10 different ghost stories from people during the TOL Summer 18. And then Natalie and I have to sit back and say, which of those do we believe and which do we not? And we've kind of talked about it like in a casual way. But it's like, you know, if you don't trust a person, can you trust their story? I think it's easier to trust a person. I think it's easier to judge a person whether they are being sincere to you than it is to judge whether a picture is fake or not, personally. But also, I think that a person comes with the emotion attached to it as well. And we were actually, I hate when I have to shift. Natalie and I were listening to Malcolm Gladwell revisionist history. They were talking about memory, and you remember things the wrong way. And it's okay. You're not lying when you retell something that you think is the truth, but you're remembering it wrong. The emotional part of it, the core part of it, stays, right? The terror that you feel when you were experiencing it remains. Then, depending on how many times you've told that story to people, you want to convince them, right? So you have a personal experience, and you tell your spouse. And your spouse is kind of like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense, because the couch was over there. And you're like, okay. And so the next time you retell it, you might switch a detail, which you feel is not an important detail, but which led to like there being a possible explanation. And so you switch it up just a little bit. And it doesn't change the heart of what you experienced. What it changes is the physical detail that someone else is going to get stuck on. They're not going to be able to really hear what you're saying, because you're going to be focused on this other part of it. So eliminate that, and the story becomes more clear. And we do that consciously. We do it unconsciously. But I think that happens. So you gotta when you're interviewing someone. I'm with Jaden right now in that you cannot tell me, no matter how much evidence I don't get, because that's the important part, the don't get part, no matter how much evidence I don't get someplace, that someone didn't experience something. The woman I spoke to felt as if she were talking, that we talked about earlier, was talking to a relative who had passed. I can't take that away from her, because I can maybe explain her picture away with some obscure reason. I'm going to Colleen's question, so thank you, Jane. Going to Colleen's question, which is, as an investigator, or her comment, I should say, I don't think any evidence is going to convince a non-believer. As a consumer, I'm kind of torn. I want physical evidence, but hearing nothing but personal experiences isn't going to keep me from believing a place is haunted. Yeah, I agree with that. The TV shows don't want that, right? So as a consumer like that. So if I'm talking about I have read very few ghost books that have a picture in them of the ghost, or that have a lot of pictures of ghosts. Usually they're like what my books are, which are pictures of the location itself. There are very few, there's not a lot of them. And if there are a lot of them, the books generally tend to be, I'm an investigator, and I went out and investigated. And not about the place, but about the people themselves, which annoy me, by the way. So, I'd agree, there's a kind of a torn about that. Going back to Jeff. My evidence was after my grandfather's funeral. So, first of all, let me say, Jeff, even before I finish, thank you very much for sharing this. And I said my prayers to you earlier this week. Or my thoughts to you. My evidence was after my grandfather's funeral. I was at home around 9 p.m., staring at the ceiling while lying in bed. All of a sudden, it felt as if someone sat down on my bed, where a normal adult would sit if their kids are in the bed. It was so heavy. I looked over, and there was nothing there. The springs made sounds, and it was so heavy it nearly caused me to roll out of bed onto the floor. Once I got over the shock, I sat and smiled at the ceiling, and then the weight lifted and the bed went back to normal. Okay, first of all, Jeff, I'm totally going to have to get the details of this story for the Haunted Love book, because part of it's about crisis apparitions and like people saying one final goodbye. Thank you very much for sharing that, Jeff. That's a personal experience, right? where you look at a picture of the bed indented? No. Does that change what happened that night to you at all? I don't think so. So I think Colleen makes a really good point of, I think there's a difference between us as consumers and us as people who are just believers or non-believers, right? We need to have a personal experience to believe, but in our media, we want a little bit of the fantastical too. So, Colleen, you're totally gonna have to get in touch with me then if you've got that kind of story as well. So I'm documenting them all. I'm thinking it's 11:18 right now. We've been on for over an hour. That we're gonna have to stop it on this one. Put a fork in it on this one. What I want you guys to do is think about this, share this a video as a touchstone for discussion, because I really want people to evaluate. I'm gonna, not a ghost by the way, that's one of the kids at the sleepover. Stop, Ella, she's trying to freak you guys out, I think, and she kept flicking the... I know, but why are you flicking the lights, little one? She almost made it the entire episode without coming out. I told her she was going to be punished if she did. I don't think paranormal investigators, people who are searching for a truth, can necessarily do away with evidence. Okay? So I'm kind of playing devil's advocate on this. I think there needs to be less of an emphasis on it, but I think that it still has its place. But I want to hear other people's ideas on this. So share this video so we can maybe get some other people who weren't in on this. For those of you guys who are experiencing me for the first time, thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing this with me, or sharing time with me. My name is Christopher Balzano, speaking for Natalie Christ, who is still hopefully listening on what we're doing. Here's hoping, or TOL. Okay, sorry, I gotta say, Natalie always gets mad when I make this part too long, but Facebook.com, Tripping on Legends. My Twitter is at SpookyBalzano. Our Instagram and our email is spookytripping at gmail.com, then just spookytripping on Instagram. And then our primary website is trippingonlegends.wordpress.com. So please keep in touch with us, keep in touch with what we're doing. Like I said, episode 43 is coming out on Monday, and then boom, boom, boom. We kind of want to release them all at the same time, but I want to spread them out as well. So at least the next 3 weeks, you guys are going to get new episodes about our summer trip. I'm Chris Balzano. She's Natalie Christ. And here's hoping that all of your ghostly evidence is legendary. Good night, Annette. Yes. Thank you very much. I've been on your show. If you still have a show, call me up. We'll get together.